Hey YouTube, Case Against Faith here. I haven't made a video in a long time and I'm going to do something totally different. I've never done a movie review before. I'm just homesick. I have a fever, but I'm not really feeling sick. So I'm on antibiotics I got from the doctor. So I just figured, what the heck, I'll make a video. And I'll do something totally different. I'll make a movie review of Terminator Genisys. Probably should have made this a week ago because movie's already been out a week. But what the heck. I'll try not to give you any spoilers, or at least in the first half of the video. And then when I'm going to talk more spoilerific, I'll say turn it off if you don't want any spoilers. I will assume that you've at least seen the trailer. If you haven't seen at least the trailer, well, I doubt anybody's listening to me who hasn't seen the trailer. So I'm going to assume that you've seen the trailer. What else? So bottom line is that most people have already made up their mind on it. Most people seem to not like it. I mean, it's gotten generally poor reviews. It's like 26% on Tomato Meter. But nevertheless, there are a fair number of vocal supporters that say, yeah, it's a great movie. I'm kind of in between. I really actually found it quite fun and enjoyable. I left the movie entertained. But I do recognize that there certainly are a lot of flaws. There's no way I would say it was anywhere near a replacement or better than or equal to Terminator 1 or 2, obviously. But nevertheless, I thought it was better than the 26% that you would surmise from a tomato meter of 26%. I thought it was better than that. I thought it was reasonably decent. I'm not normally one to say, some people say, well, it's not a necessary sequel. Well, no movie is necessary, so I'm not normally one to say that. I mean, it's entertainment. And I'm also not normally one to complain, well, it's just a cash grab, because all movies are made to make money. I mean, that's why they're there for. So those are not my normal complaints. Nevertheless, just simply the fact that Terminator 1 and 2 ended so cleanly that it does seem like that extending it in any way does seem like a hack. Like in Terminator 3, when the Schwarzenegger Terminator in Terminator 3 says, "You didn't stop Judgment Day, you just delayed it." That it was basically a hack to extend the story that didn't do a good job of extending the story in my view. At least a good premise for extending the story. So in that sense, yes, sequels to the Terminator story were definitely questionable, just based upon how well the 1 and 2 tied things up to apparently stop Judgment Day. And also the fact that the original Judgment Day was supposed to be in 97, so it's very, very dated, and of course Schwarzenegger was much younger then, so it's dated in that sense. So making a new Terminator movie with Schwarzenegger as the star certainly comes across as dated, and that would be it felt that way to me some. I'm not going to deny it, even though I overall enjoyed it. I can't deny that it was also felt dated. So I think that's a legitimate complaint. A couple of the complaints I've heard people say I don't think were so legitimate. Like some people complained about the name Genisys, and it was spelled with a funny spelling. Well, it seemed fairly obvious to me that this Genisys was going to tie in somehow to Cyberdyne and or Cyberdyne Systems, or the other entity that basically Cyberdyne Systems was. The name is drawing a blank. But anyways, it was going to tie into that to some degree. So it seemed obvious of that it was going to have something to do with a company, a product, or a research, a title of a research project, or something of that effect. So it seemed obvious it was going to tie into that, and that those things often have misspelled names on purpose if they're going to be sold to the public or shown to the public for marketing purposes. So that to me didn't seem like a legitimate complaint. Some people complained that the story was too convoluted, like the time travel made it too difficult to follow. And I didn't see it that way at all. I thought at least it was easy to follow. Now, whether or not it had plot holes in it, that's another story. But just could you follow what the story was trying to say? And I thought it was easy to follow. No problems at all. Now, were there plot holes? Yes, of course there are. But time travel movies are always going to have plot holes. That's kind of the way. It's really just about impossible to make a time travel story that doesn't have problems if you really try to analyze it. And I really think that's true of even the original Terminator movies. Although, one major difference between the original Terminator movies and this one is that the original ones intentionally glossed over the more stupid parts of the story so that you can get to the key part of the story, which is basically man versus machine and running and killing and destroying it. So the stupid parts of the time travel story were kind of pushed in the background. Like, for example, here's how, let me give you an example. In the very first Terminator, Kyle Reese is trying to tell the world about the machines that are going to come to kill everybody, and he's from the future, and he's warning the world because he's from the future. And so people think he's crazy, and the psychiatrist is talking to him, and they ask him questions about this supposed future world that he comes from. And so he says that the time machine can only send flesh. And so they say, well, wait a second, you just said these were machines. And then he says, well, but it's encased, the Terminator is encased in human flesh. And so that's why I can go into the time machine. And so then they say, well, why would the machines build it like that? And Kyle Reese says, how should I know? Take it, Kyle.
I didn't build the fucking thing. Okay.
At least in my way of thinking, that was kind of a nod to the audience to say, look, we know this part is kind of stupid. Just accept it and let's move on with the story. At least that's the way I interpret it. It's kind of a wink or a nod to the audience that, yeah, they know that part of the story is kind of stupid, that machines from the future would build a time machine that could only send flesh. But it was okay if the machines were encased in the flesh. That, it was kind of stupid. And if I remember correctly, it's been a while since I saw the original, but I thought I remember that Kyle said that in the first one that the time machine could only be used once more, and so therefore it was just him versus the Terminator and nobody else was going to be coming. I seem to remember him saying something like that. Now, of course, that part is easy to kind of extend. You can always say that, well, he was wrong, he was lied to, or he was misled, or another time machine was made, or it was improved, or it was fixed, or whatever. But then when you get to the second one, that's glossed over even more so. Like, if the thing could send machines as long as it was cased in flesh, how was the liquid metal Terminator able to go through? Because it can make itself look like flesh, but there was no flesh at all. It was all the special liquid thing. So how did this liquid Terminator make it through it? And you also kind of have to wonder, how is it that if the time machine is still functioning and still working and they can send more, why is it that the machine sends just one more machine and they again let a human in to in this case send another Terminator, but nevertheless they let the humans back in to control the machine a second time? So, I mean, do the machines say, okay, we sent one of our guys, it's your turn, come send one of your guys? And you could even make that same complaint about Terminator 3, that apparently the same thing happened yet again. The Terminators came back in and sent a third Terminator to the past, and the humans sent a third Protector back in the past. And so then apparently it happened a third time when machines took turns and switching one person and one person. And so if they got a working time machine, why are they just sending one of these Terminators every time and letting the humans in to fix things? So when you think of it, try to think of it logically, it doesn't really hold up. But in the first two movies, particularly, it's kind of like, okay, that part's kind of stupid, but just forget about it. Let's get on to the cool stuff about this liquid thing that's going to go come and kill the crap out of everybody. So it was more in the background. While in this new movie, it's kind of more like in your face. Okay, you're going to see exactly what they did, and then you're going to say, well, why the hell did they do it that way? So in that sense, that makes this movie a lot worse in that sense, is because when they push the stupidities, even though it's really the stupidities that existed all along, but by shoving it into your face, that's what makes this one less good than the other ones, and at least one of the key things that makes it less good. Now, when I first heard about that they were going to be making a new Terminator with Arnold Schwarzenegger as the star, my first inclination was I was figuring, well, what they're probably going to do is use something like mocap. That's it, and so that it would look like the original Terminator. That could be one way they could have done it. Or they could have made it, they did that in the fourth Terminator movie. They had a small section with a mocapped or CGI'd Schwarzenegger Terminator. So I thought that was one possibility what they could have done. Another possibly what I thought they could have done was they could have made it where Schwarzenegger was like a human involved in the engineering of robotics or something to that effect. Like there was even an outtake. I don't. If anybody's not seen this, there was a scene that was made for. I don't remember whether it was for Terminator 3 or Terminator 4. I think it was 4. But there was a cut. There was a scene that would wound up being cut, and it had Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he's supposed to be in the army or in one of the military branches, and it's kind of humorous. They have a redneck, Texan type of voice, so it's not Schwarzenegger's voice that's saying the lines. It's somebody else who speaks very Texan, and he's so the Schwarzenegger character who's supposed to be like the part of the robotics research or whatever it was is on the treadmill, and he said, "Yes, I'm a good American soldier doing my part for the country," and all that kind of stuff. So if you haven't seen that, there's a good reason why it was cut from the movie, because it is kind of stupid, but it's kind of cute to see anyways, just for fun. So you can find that. I may even include a link in it down below. So I thought that was at least a possibility, something along those lines. My initial thought was they couldn't possibly be thinking about making him play a Terminator at his age, could they? I mean, that seemed like that couldn't possibly be their idea. Well, that was their idea. And you could easily argue that that was a bad idea to begin with. And yeah, I understand that argument. So there's lots of good reasons why this should not have been done. That it seems dated, having the original Judgment Day was supposed to be in '97, and Schwarzenegger looks a lot older, and that the original movie was made so long ago, it definitely comes across as dated. So that's a legitimate complaint. At any rate, and yet I overall left the movie feeling entertained despite all those weaknesses. There were several other rumors I'd heard about the movie while it was being made or before it was being made, and one of them is that it was going to be sort of like Back to the Future 2, in the sense that you see the heroes acting in the background of scenes that were already in the previous movie. And that didn't seem to make sense to me either, because if they had scenes from Terminator 1 and or Terminator 2, but they have recast Kyle Reese, and they've recast Sarah Connor. Linda Hamilton's not in anymore. So how could they have new people playing these characters in the background, interacting with those characters that were in the first movie, unless they digitally replaced them in the scenes in the first movies or something like that, or really made these actors look really close to the original ones, which, especially in the case of Kyle Reese, that was definitely not a very viable alternative. So that didn't seem to make any sense, and turns out that's not really what they did. They did something a little bit like that I'll talk about that in a little more detail in the second half of this review when I'm getting more into spoilers. But they didn't do anything really exactly like what I just said, although kind of close. So what else did I want to say? Oh, a lot of people, I'm assuming that you've seen the trailer, and you find out in the trailer that John Connor is now a hybrid or something to that effect. He's a Terminator of sorts, but he's also human. And a lot of people complained that they shouldn't have revealed that in the trailer. They said that they just did that because nobody was interested in the movie and they have to add some shock to the trailer to get people to generate interest, but that it was a bad idea to put that in the trailer. Well, I disagree with that, and here's the reason, because that's something that people would find out. Let me compare this to Star Trek and Into Darkness, another movie that I basically overall enjoyed, although a lot of fans didn't like it. And one of the things people really didn't like about Into Darkness is that they kept saying it's not Khan, it's not Khan, it's not Khan, and it was Khan. And so to have kept insisting that it was not Khan, and then everybody finds out, yes, it's Khan, then you feel conned, so to speak. You were lied to. I think that if they had to make a Khan-based story for Into Darkness, then they should have embraced it to begin with. They should have said a new chapter, a new way to see Khan, or some way to frame it like Spock meets Khan for the first time again, or I don't know, some way to frame it where yes, they are embracing the fact that they're reusing Khan, but but try to make it where they are showing you that it's also different. I think that because that's something that the fans are going to know. Similar with John Connor. Too many people are going to know that John Connor has in some way no longer the John Connor that we know of the hero that we know him to be. Nevertheless, the trailer, you still don't know from the trailer, is he a pure villain? Is he maybe got some, maybe he's got a alternative agenda that's not really the same as either the humans or the traditional machine agenda. Maybe he's got a different agenda. Maybe he wants to build more hybrids. So you didn't get from the trailer that much. I mean that there's something strange and different going on with John Connor, but exactly what happened you didn't know. Now, what's his name? The director. I can't believe the name's slipping off the top of my head. Avatar and James Cameron, of course. James Cameron did an interview about it, and he was more direct about the new John Connor's role. So I think his interview was more spoilery than the trailer. So I more disagreed with how much James Cameron gave away. So like I said, I basically was not upset that they gave away that something happened with John Connor in the trailer. So now I'm going to start getting a little bit more spoiler heavy. This isn't going to be too bad, I hope. As it gets more and more spoilery, I'll tell you it's going to be more and more for you to turn off. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how the aged Terminator is handled a little bit. It's not like they make it a soap opera of he's a forgotten hero in an unknown time. Will they still remember him? It wasn't like that. But there's just a little bit of what's it like to be an old Terminator in the movie. I mean, they didn't make it a hard sob story. I mean, it was only a small section of the movie, just a couple of lines. But there's when Kyle Reese is introduced to the new Terminator, he says he's never seen an old Terminator before, and that's when Schwarzenegger explains the skin is aged, but then he specifically says that the mechanics are at 100% working shape, that good as just as good as new, fully mechanical, and they say something. Kyle Reese says something like, "So you're old but not obsolete," or something like that. So that was a little corny, but what the heck? And a little bit later in the movie, again, it was only a small part, but after he's been in some battles, now he's not working. Now his mechanicals is not 100% functioning, and so now sometimes when he's so he's kind of beating. It's like he's beating on an old there's a couple scenes where it's like he's beating on the side of an old television to get it working on himself, sort of like that, and old. So they do kind of broach the concept of an old Terminator a little bit, but don't think that's a huge part of the movie. Okay, so this will definitely be getting more spoilerific, so if you don't want to know too much about the story, you might want to move on. But like I said earlier, I said one of the big complaints about how they shove it in your face, the stuff that was really stupid all along, like you see in this movie the scene where the time machine has been vacated by the machines. I guess exactly what happened. The humans have won a big battle, and they're now at the time machine. And John Connor, sends back. He tells that the machines have a time machine, and they've sent somebody back in time. They've sent one of their Terminators back in time to prevent me from ever being born. And I'm going to send Kyle Reese back and to try to save the day. And that's kind of when you're sitting there saying, you've got a freaking time machine and you're just going to send one guy? So that's where you're putting the stupidity of the story right in your face. And again, like I said earlier, once the humans have got control of the time machine, how did the Terminators come back in to send the Terminators from 2 and 3? So why didn't they, did they take turns or whatever? So that stupidity was really always in the story, but it wasn't shoved in your face like it is in this movie. And so, yeah, that's one part that makes it kind of crappy. And that is a time travel story. You kind of need to gloss over the stupid parts instead of shoving it in your face. Now, so there's one other thing I was going to mention. That is on the What the Flick movie reviews. That's the TYT, the Turks movie reviews. Ben Malkowitz. Sorry, don't remember how his name is pronounced. My apologies, Ben. But he had a complaint saying that there's a conversation at the end of the movie that makes no sense. And so he complained about that conversation making no sense. Well, this is definitely spoilerific, so don't watch if you don't want to know this. But the conversation, I'm pretty, unless I'm mistaken about what Ben was complaining about, but I think I know what Ben was complaining about, and that is there's this scene at the end of the movie where Kyle Reese, the one that had just got done defeating the machines, and once again the movie ends where the humans think that they have prevented Judgment Day and stopped every bad thing from ever happening. That's the way at the end of the movie, that's the way the characters think. There is a post-credit scene where the lead into the next movie comes in, if they actually do get made. But there's a post-credit scene. But anyway, but the point I was saying is that the characters at the end of the movie, they think that they've defeated the machines. Judgment Day is never going to happen. And yet, the adult Kyle Reese, who just got done defeating the machines and preventing the thing from ever happening, comes and tells young Kyle Reese something about the future. Okay? So, I believe that Ben Malkowitz, I'm sorry. I believe that Ben's complaint is if he just got done preventing the end of the world, then why would he be telling his young self stuff about the future that's never going to happen? Well, if that was his complaint is completely bogus because that was explained in the movie earlier. And that is, although it's a stupid excuse, but nevertheless, it was within the story, it was the excuse. And that is earlier in the movie, the Kyle Reese has memories that he can't explain. He says he knows he remembers something when he was a kid or something, and yet what he thinks that memory is of something of a world that's totally different than the world that he came from. So, but yet he's certain he remembers it as if it really happened. And the Schwarzenegger Terminator says that time travel, generates like some key points. I forgot what the mojo hooey wooey word he used was for the time travel, but something about the paradoxes, about the points of time that the time travel, that sort of some kind of bleed through between the timelines happen, and so that therefore he was that Kyle was remembering something from the childhood of a different life of Kyle. Okay, and so at the end of the movie, the adult Kyle sees the young Kyle that was of that time that gave him the information. So he's now in the other timeline, telling the kid what he's going to need to know. That's going to need to somehow magically jump from one timeline from the other because of the mixing of timelines type of stuff. So yes, that's a stupid answer, but it was in the movie. So Ben was completely wrong about it not making sense. It was completely explained in the movie. So that just kind of, unless I was mistaken about what his complaint was, it's always kind of, when I saw his review, that was one thing that would kind of annoyed me, is because he clearly didn't understand that. That is, if he did shroud what his complaint was, he just said that, well, there's a conversation at the end of the movie that made no sense to him, and I'm assuming that was the conversation that he's referring to. I can't think of any that he might be referring to. So people may know that what's his name, Matt Smith, one of a Doctor Who, not the most recent Doctor Who, but the one before. He has a character. He has a relatively small role in this movie. He is depicted as being a key part. Probably going to be the key villain in the next two movies. They've already planned out two more movies. They may or may not get made because I don't think this one's going to make enough money, but who knows, maybe with international revenue. Sometimes movies make better international than, and can make it worth them to make some more, so maybe they will, I don't know. But if they do get made, the Matt Smith character is built to be the primary villain in the next two movies. And he is like the embodiment of not Cyberdyne. Can't even remember the word. The machine. Well, the word I'm looking for is sort of like in the Star Trek. I can't even remember the Star Trek word. In Star Trek, the Borg, they have a collective. There's the relative word for that in not Cyberdyne, but I can't remember the word I'm looking for. I'm an idiot. I'll have to correct myself in the comment box. But at any rate, there is the Matt Smith's character is the embodiment of that collective. He's sort of like the Borg. He's sort of like the Borg Queen from Star Trek from Star Trek First Contact, and so we will presumably see more of him in the next two movies. And in fact, I've read the writers of the movie. They've kind of written something about that character and what we will see in the next two movies, at least a little bit about it. So this part is a spoiler, sort of, but it's what you can see online from the writers. And basically they say that Matt Smith's character is somebody that he can see multiple timelines simultaneously, and that what he is seeing is that things get changed every time the timeline changes. It changes, but it's ultimately the same. Ultimately, the humans win every time, no matter how many times it changes. And so, basically, his plan is to try to find a new way in which it will change without and have a real change, and the humans finally don't win. And that was part of the reason why they co-opted John Connor, was to try to make that, at least that was one of the attempts to make a change that was more drastic. But of course that didn't work. Before I saw the movie, I'd wondered if they were going to somehow get John Connor back. In fact, in the trailer, I think you see the line where the Kyle Reese says that we have to turn him back or have to get him how he was, or I forget the exact line, but they say that in the trailer. And so I was wondering if that storyline was going to happen. They were going to try to get John Connor back. And at least in this movie, John Connor seems to be dead. But it's still possible that they will eventually do that in one of the other two movies, is that they will have another variation which will then bring back in John Connor, but have him then be a hero once again, to really defeat even the Matt Smith's version of the Terminator, or something like that. I'm kind of guessing. So I hope this wasn't too rambling, and if you don't like it, well, too bad. This was just my first video in a long time, and I just figured, what the hell. Yeah, I've had my mind on making some other videos on other subjects. Back to more my atheist subjects. I've been kind of busy. I know I only have a few subscribers. I know I'm not the best speaker. So I haven't really been all that motivated, but yet I've been planning on it, and who knows, maybe if I'm homesick for some more, maybe I'll make some more videos, or maybe I won't. Who knows? So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this, or if you didn't, oh well. Talk to y'all later. Bye-bye. Oh, one of the other spoiler things I was planning on talking about was what they did do. Remember I said that there was a rumor that it was going to be kind of like Terminator. I mean, it was going to be kind of like Back to the Future 2, where the characters interact with scenes from the previous movies. And they didn't quite do that, but they kind of did. Basically, they refilmed the scenes where Kyle Reese and the original Terminator land, using, of course, the new Kyle Reese and original Schwarzenegger footage and or CGI to make that happen. And they refilmed one scene with dialogue from the first movie. The scene where Schwarzenegger is walking without his clothes, and some punks or bikers or hippies or whatever you want to call the guys, they had a bike, and and so one of them says, "Well, what's wrong with this scene?" And Schwarzenegger walks up, the Terminator walks up, and they kind of say, "Wash day, huh? Must not have any clothes today, huh?" And then, at least in the original one, the Terminator kills them all and takes their clothes and heads on to this next stop in his agenda. Well, that's when, so they used new actors to play those original characters saying the same lines, and then cut and merged in the original Schwarzenegger scene from the original Terminator. Except then that's when the new old man Terminator walks up and says, "You won't be needing any clothes, and I've been waiting for you." And they have a little bit of a fight, and that part's done with CGI, with the old Terminator fighting the original Terminator, I should say, the original Terminator in CGI fighting the old man Schwarzenegger Terminator some. And that was kind of cute how they did that. So, thus, there was no issue with the old Kyle Reese actor and the old Sarah Connor actress, because the scene that was reused was with minor characters, and they filmed it with all new actors to refilm it. So it was not exactly what I'd heard they did. Like, was not exactly like Back to the Future 2. That's kind of so I ran my mouth for too long again. Talk to y'all later. Bye.